All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully, everybody had a good weekend. So we'll go ahead and get started here. If you can't hear me, go ahead and let me know. But looks like everything's up and running good. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with Dennis D. Dennis D says, "You teach the move at the end of the Top Speed Golf system as if it's an option for you to incorporate it into your swing. Is it an option, or should every golfer have the move?" It's actually both. I mean, you don't have to have the move in your swing to play good golf. The only issue is if you're not doing the move, it's going to be difficult to get forward shaft lean. You're typically going to flip the club. You're going to lose a lot of distance. But yeah, every tour player does the move, just like every tour player is meeting everything that we talk about in the Top Speed Golf system. So I always look at the move as kind of the sixth piece of the Top Speed Golf system. Anything in the Top Speed Golf system is an option. They're all options, but they're all things that all the best players to do. And I would recommend that you do all of them. So yes, the move. And just to kind of go over exactly what the move is, the move is to shallow out the club. So get this club to where it's in a nice shallow position. So that way you can stay in your posture. Because if it's not in a shallow position, let's say it's in this kind of position in the transition, what happens is you have to make a compensation to get that club to come back down plane. Usually involves standing up and flipping the club through impact. Or a lot of times you stand up and that club works too much from the inside. You hit a lot of snap hooks, a lot of hosel rockets, and stuff like that. So move is part of what gets you to where this club's nice and shallowing out. So that way you don't have to make a compensation in the downswing to get that club to come back down on plane and to hit a good golf shot. So that's the first part of it. Just to break it down, and it's one move really, but just to break it down into the two pieces there. The second piece is the squaring of the club face. The way that you have to square the club face when you get forward shaft lean. When you flip the club, you're squaring up the club face with this trail hand really straightening out and coming in like that. So you can see at impact here, square club face, no forward shaft lean. Shaft straight up and down. You're looking at kind of an opposite of a bird's eye view. I'm not really sure what that is, but if you're looking from the ball up, this is kind of what it looks like. So if I come in and I have forward shaft lean, but I keep these wrist angles, my club face is wide open. So I have to turn that handle to square up the face. And now that's in a more of a lead wrist bent back position, kind of like that. And then it's more of a trail wrist bent back position. And then a lead wrist kind of turning that handle down. It's like a throttle on a motorcycle. That's what you're doing to square the club face there. So you can see now I have forward shaft lean and a square club face. So you have to change kind of the way that you square up the face as well. So that's what the move is all about. Highly recommend it if you are struggling getting really good compression on your shots. Maybe you hit a lot of thin shots. That's going to be something that the move can help with, because thin shots are usually a product of flipping through impact. So keep that in mind. And the move, it's a tougher kind of thing to do, which is why it's not necessarily a part of the Top Speed Golf system. It's kind of more of an advanced. It's just a harder thing to do than the other things. It's a lot easier to increase your shoulder turn or to keep your spine stable. It's a lot easier to do those things than it is to work on the move. It's just an easier thing to do. So that's why we kind of have it in there as an additional kind of bonus course after the fact. But I consider it to be the sixth piece of the Top Speed Golf system. All right. So Stephen B says, my practice swing looks and feels way better than the actual ball hitting swing. I see the same amongst my playing partners. How do we turn our practice swing into our actual swing? So that's a good question, and something that I run into quite often, especially as an instructor. So basically, when you're hitting the golf ball, your focus, or when you're swinging to hit the golf ball, right, your focus is to hit the golf ball, not only to hit it straight, but to hit it on the center of the club face. You've got to hit it. You got to hit the ball before the ground, right? You got to hit it hard. You got to hit it with a square club face. You got to hit it with a club path that's on plane. Whereas with a practice swing, all you're doing is you're just kind of making a movement. None of those things have to happen. So your swing with the golf ball is a reaction to make those things happen. And then your swing without the golf ball is just a movement that you're making with your body. And it doesn't matter if anything is going on, right? So what you have to do is you have to try to make your practice swing as if you're hitting a golf ball. Check these things on camera. If you're working on movements, like for instance, I'll have students that are working on forward shaft lean. This kind of piggybacks on the previous question. I'll have students that are working on forward shaft lean. So they're coming into impact and they're saying, hey, I'm able to get forward shaft lean in my practice swing, but when the golf ball's there, I can't get forward shaft lean. Well, I was like, all right, well, send me your practice swing where you're getting this forward shaft lean, and I'll take a look at it, make sure that you're on the right track. So we do that, and what do I see when they're doing that practice swing? Just like what I was talking about in that previous question, they're coming in. Sure, they're getting forward shaft lean, but this club face, I mean, it is 45 degrees open, and that's because they don't know how to square up the face. It's a different movement. So make sure that you are doing all of these things that need to happen at impact when the golf ball is there without the golf ball there, and then that will more easily help you transfer that to the swing with the golf ball. And there's some other things that you can do as well. So I would look, if you're working on forward shaft lean and you see you're getting forward shaft lean at impact, make sure that club face is square too. Check your club path. Make sure that club's working down on plane. Try to actually brush the grass when you're when you're swinging through. Some other things that you can do, if you're having trouble with it, is clip a tee off the ground, hit a piece of paper, hit a leaf, hit something to kind of help you transition to the golf ball. Because a lot of times, you may do all those things, but then your focus, goes toward actually having to hit the golf ball. So when you're just working on a practice swing, it's just the movement is the focus that you're on. But even if you do kind of the things that I talked about and make sure that you're seeing all these things, when you add the golf ball, some focus is taken away from that movement and it's put on hitting that golf ball. So, you're going to have a little bit of trouble there, not doing what people a lot of times call a hit impulse, is you're wanting to hit that golf ball so much as that's where all your focus is. So if you use something like clipping a tee or hitting a piece of paper or something like that, that can help you transition that impulse from swinging at nothing to swinging at a tee or a piece of paper to swinging at a golf ball. Because if you swing at a piece of paper or a tee or something like that, the hit impulse isn't going to be there as much because it's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't matter if you square the club face. It doesn't matter if you hit the piece of paper straight or hit it with a lot of speed. It ain't going anywhere. So it takes away a little bit of that. So that's one way you can kind of transition to that. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, you're typically, your practice swings aren't going to look the same. But if you look closer at your practice swings, they would be really bad shots if the golf ball were there usually. So keep that in mind and check your practice swings on camera and make sure that everything's looking good. If you want help from me, from an instructor, I believe Robin has some spots available too. We offer an unlimited swing review program. If you click on the get review, or there's also a link above the video where you can click and check that out and see what that's all about. But yeah, if you'd like help from an instructor to kind of pinpoint these things, we're here to help you. So Brent W says, I have a habit of topping my fairway woods. Any suggestions? So this is fairly common as far as topping fairway woods is concerned. The first thing I would do is I would go to our stop chunking and topping course. For the kind of the big issues, the main issues in the golf swing, we have specific courses that with drills that cover exactly what you need to do to fix those things. And we actually have a stop chunking and topping course. So I would recommend first going through those courses. I'll give you some extra tips here in a second, but look out for those other, we have courses for slicing, hooking, topping, chunking, all of those sorts of things. So you always want to check out and make sure that we have a course that kind of covers your issues. So to get to the courses, all you got to do is click the house icon at the top of the page. It looks like a little house. That's going to take you to the home page. And if you scroll down there, you'll see it says Top Speed Golf System course progress. If you scroll down, you'll see the stop chunking and topping section. Start working through those drills. So here's a big reason why I see a lot of people struggle topping fairway woods. And a big reason why is because they play the ball too far forward in the stance. So because, it's a longer club and it feels like our driver a little bit, especially a 3-wood, it's not much shorter. It's a couple inches shorter than a driver. It's a smaller head, but it kind of has that feeling like I really want to launch this ball like I do with my driver. But if you're hitting it off the deck, off the turf, it's going to be difficult to do that. You have to hit down on the golf ball. So what I see a lot of times, if I can angle this down, and hopefully you all will be able to see this, but if I'm playing this ball too far forward in my stance, so I see a lot of people, they play the fairway woods like the same place that they play their driver. So if I play this ball too far forward, what's going to happen is I may end up this club may end up bottoming out and then be on the way up to the golf ball. That's what we want to have. That's what we want to have happen with the driver when it's up on a tee. But when we're hitting something off the turf, we need to have that ground first contact. So I would just say, in general, straight down from the lead ear is a good ball position, not beer position, ball position. And maybe a ball forward of that would be a good position. That's going to help you to come in nice and shallow. So I'd make sure that your ball position is good there. But that's really the main thing that I see. The other thing that I see with fairway woods is, people try to hit it like their driver. It's kind of piggybacks on that. But people try to hit it like they do with their driver. And a lot of people, in an effort to hit up on the golf ball with their driver, is they hang back and they don't get a good weight shift. That's not what you want to do with the driver either. But in an effort to kind of stay behind the ball and hit up on it, people will keep their weight back and not get a good weight shift. So the weight shift is a big thing to get to your lead. You got to make sure that you're getting to your lead side, so that way you can hit down and through the golf ball. And that's what you need to do with shots off the turf. Now, if you're hitting this off the tee, you can hit it very, very similarly to what you do with your driver. But I assume if you're topping it, you're hitting it off the ground. So again, I would look through that stop chunking and topping section and start working through those drills. There's some weight shift drills in there that can really help you. All right. So Gary K says, I have low back issues and it's hard for me to clear my hips. So I tend to swing around my body and hit most shots left of center. So it sounds like you kind of just swing all arms and just let the club case kind of roll over a little bit too much, and you miss things to the left. That's what I'm kind of gathering from that. It's hard for me to know exactly what's going on without seeing your swing, Gary. But I would recommend trying to use your legs as much as possible. Try to get your legs more involved and rotate the body open. You can still stay, pretty upright and take some pressure off your lower back if you're using your lower body. So I would just try to feel like there's actually a great drill on the website. It's called the step drill. It's really, really great for weight shift and using your lower body properly. I really recommend that drill. To find that drill, it's actually that drill is in many videos on the website. But the one that I really like is one that's called How to Start the Downswing. If you go to the search engine in the upper right-hand corner of the page there is the search box. If you just search the word downswing, I believe it will be the third video down on there. Search the word downswing, third video down. And in that video, Clay goes over that step drill. And what you're doing in that step drill is you're just starting with your feet together. And as soon as that backswing starts, you're starting to step forward. And that's getting you to really squat down, get your legs involved, and help you to rotate coming through there. So hopefully that helps, Gary. And hopefully your back will start feeling better as well. So James M. And James M., if you wouldn't mind, if you use different colors, it's hard for me to read. So if you wouldn't mind, always just use the default. I read all of them, so you don't need to highlight it or anything. So James M. says, I started topping a lot of irons, particularly the 6 and 7, has not affected 8, 9, or wedges. Any suggestions? It's like I mentioned earlier with the topped 3-wood. Work through that stop chunking and topping course. Click on that house icon, scroll down to the courses, and start working through that stop chunking and topping section. Almost always, chunking and topping is a product of not getting a proper weight shift. Because what happens is when you don't get a proper weight shift and you don't get to your lead side, what happens is this low point, this club comes down and it reaches a low point and then it moves back up. So if you don't get a proper weight shift to your lead side, that low point ends up happening before the golf ball. So the club bottoms out, and then it bottoms out, and then the club's actually on its way up into the golf ball. So if the club bottoms out and you miss the turf, you don't hit the turf, and then it's on its way into the golf ball, you're going to top it. If it club bottoms out before the golf ball and it hits the turf, that's going to be a chunk shot. So that's why it's called the stop chunking and topping section. It's basically a product of the same thing, of the same issue, which is the low point of the club coming down, reaching its low point. That's happening too soon in the swing. It needs to happen, further in front of the ball. It needs to happen actually in front of the ball. If you're hitting down and then through the golf ball, that low point needs to be happening a little bit in front of the golf ball. And that's what that stop chunking and topping course is all about. It's to help you do that. And that's going to help you to get those. I would look at ball position, maybe, like I said, ball position with the lead ear, straight down from the lead ear, is typically going to be a good place for all irons. Maybe you're playing that 6 and 7 too far forward, and that low point is happening before the golf ball. And your shorter irons, you're playing further back, so you're getting that ball first contact. So it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing, James, but I would definitely be working through that stop chunking and topping course to get you on your way. So James S says, I watched Clay showing to hit a driver with draws and fades. Can't hit the driver on the toes side. How do you do that? Hold on a minute. So James S says, sorry, I have to read that again. I watched Clay showing to hit driver with draws and fades. Can't hit the driver on the toes side. How do you do that? So you're asking how to hit the driver off the toe. James, if you would, James S., if you would kind of restate your question. Are you asking me how to hit a driver off the toe? If you would be a little bit more, you could clear that up for me, exactly what you want me to ask, because I don't want to go over how to hit a ball off a toe, if that's not what you're asking. So Jeff G says, need guide for ball position for iron. So ball position, hopefully you were on with this, Jeff, and hopefully you're on here right now. Really just the most simplest thing to think about is just straight down. If you look, you kind of the logo, I don't have a logo on this side of my shirt, but imagine I had this logo over here, kind of in the same place right here, straight down from the lead ear logo of the shirt, that's going to be a pretty good ball position with your irons. It's going to be just a little bit ahead of the middle of your stance. Is going to be a good place for you. That's pretty much for everything. I wouldn't, some people like to overcomplicate it and incremental, have incremental ball positions. I typically don't like to do that. Pretty much every iron I'm playing in the same place. A wedge, I might play a ball back. And fairway woods, I might play a ball forward, in hybrids. But other than that, pretty much all my irons are in the same place. I think that makes it fine. Now, if you're trying to hit a draw, it might be a little bit better to put a ball back in your stance to help you swing more out into the golf ball to help you draw. And if you're hitting a fade, it might be better to have the ball a little bit further back or a little bit further forward in your stance to allow the club to start turning to the left a little bit to get that out to in kind of pass. So it really just depends on the kind of shot you're hitting, but just in general, straight down from the lead here is going to be. So if you're in that nice tilted away, spine angle tilted away position, straight down from the lead ear is going to be basically just a little bit ahead of the middle of your stance. So that's going to be a good spot for you. So let me get a drink here. So Richard H says, what are some of the causes of topping the 3-wood in the fairway? So Richard, I just went over that. Hopefully you were able to see that, but usually it's ball position too far forward. And then the second part of it, if it's not just the first part, it could be a combination of these two things, is not getting a proper weight shift to the lead side. So go work on the stop chunking and topping course. Make sure you're getting a good weight shift to your lead side. Check your ball position. It's probably, move the ball back and see if that helps. John C says, Q, when in the downswing, do you start trying to pull the cap off the bent end of the club in the downswing? Yeah. So as soon as you're getting here, you're getting kind of down in this area. This is where you should really start to feel like you are pulling with that lead hand, because this trail hand, you're basically feeling like you're throwing, right? So you've got some pressure here, but then you are throwing, you're releasing that. And this lead hand, this is where you're going to start. When this trail hand's starting to release, this lead hand's really starting to put more pressure into the club, and that's when you're really feeling like you're popping it off of there. So that in the downswing, that's definitely when you're going to want to start feeling that. Paul R says, can you explain the rationale to having the right shoulder down and away from the target at setup, right-handed? When in the backswing, the right shoulder rises higher than the left. Why not start out with the shoulders level? So you can start with the shoulders level. The biggest importance is to this angle at impact. So at impact, you want to be slightly angled away, a little bit more angled away, somewhere in that 18 to 25 degree range. So this is what Clay talks about in the stable fluid spine section. So that's really the third, level 3 of the stable fluid spine, I believe. So in level 3, we're trying to get, this is the most important angle. So we're coming in and my body is opening up and I'm angled away. This position right here, this is the 18 to 25 degree angled away position. That's the most important one. Now we talk about in level 1 being angled away about 6 to 8 degrees and then being stable to the top of the swing about the same. The reason why we say that is because it's easier to get in this position right here if you're already in a slightly angled away position. So if you start out like this and you go up to the top and you're also vertical, or even a lot of times what happens is you'll lean toward the target, it's very, very difficult to get to this more angled away position from a more vertical position. So being a little bit more angled away helps you to do that. So the other thing is that it's usually better for your weight shift, because if you are kind of in this position, what typically happens is I'm going to kind of fall away in the backswing to get my angle more, to get my spine more angled away. So if you're already angled away, now you can just go into your lead side. So that's why we advocate doing that. You can listen, if you look at your swing and you are in that angled, that great position that we talk about at impact, that angled away position, the most important angle, I really don't care about the other angles that much. But if you are really having trouble getting into that angled away position at impact, well, let's look at how you are at address and at the top of the swing, because it's probably making it more difficult for you to get in that position. So it's all about impact. Impact's the most important thing. If you're getting into that good impact position, I don't care how you take the club away. I don't care. I don't care about your backswing. I don't care about any of that. All I care about is what's going on at impact, and everything else that we do before that point has to be to improve what's going on at impact. So if you're in that angled away, good position, body opening up, everything's good, everything's sequenced properly, then I don't care if you are vertical at address and at the top of the swing. So I just look at your swing on camera. That's what I'd recommend doing. Camera's not going to lie to you. It's going to tell you exactly what's going on. If you're not in that angled away position, it's going to be really difficult to get that club to release out in front. You're typically, if you're kind of in a more vertical position at impact, you're going to typically chop down into the golf ball and or stand up to flip to shallow it out late and release the club early. So if you're in this angled away position, that's going to help you to get this club to release out in front so you can get forward shaft lean and compression on the ball. All right, let's keep on moving. So Dennis W says, Sometimes when I hit my driver, the ball takes off in a good angle and then seems to dive toward the ground way too soon. What is causing that to happen? I would guess it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing, but I would guess that you're hitting the ball off the toe. That's usually what happens is if you hit the ball off the toe, a lot of times it'll kind of take off, but then it'll just kind of dive into the ground. And that's from when you hit the ball off the toe, something called gear effect happens, and that makes the spin axis really turn, and that makes the ball hook quite a bit. Sometimes it'll be so much that it will just kind of, if you're cutting across the ball enough, it will kind of look like it's going straight and then just kind of dive into the ground. So I would imagine that you're striking it off the toe. Like I said, it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing, but I would use like some foot powder spray and spray it on the club face, go to the driving range and hit some shots, and you'll see where you strike the ball on the club face in that foot powder spray that's on the face, and you'll know if you're striking out the toe. So if you're striking out the toe, this might seem pretty trivial, but intentionally try to strike it off the heel. Line it up as you normally would and intentionally try to strike it off the heel. And that will most likely move the strike closer to the center of the face. And if it still is on the toe, then you need to exaggerate it even more. You may even need to feel like you're hitting it off the hosel or missing the ball completely. A lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So you may need to adjust your feel even more to get that strike to move to the center. Now, if you overdo it a little bit, and you actually strike it off the heel, then all I have to do at that point is ease off of it a little bit. So give that a try. But again, in order for me to know exactly what's going on, I would need to see your swing. But it sounds like you're striking the ball extreme off the toe and cutting across it. So Mark K says, if you have to get a ball high over a tree in a fairway bunker, what's the correct ball position? Also, should your lower body stay relatively quiet? Thanks. So first of all, I wouldn't advise trying to hit a shot over a tree out of a fairway bunker. I wouldn't advise that unless the consequences of hitting the tree are just as bad as punching it out, essentially, because shots out of a fairway bunker, they're going to be more difficult. And really the way that you hit those shots is almost no different than you would hit a normal shot just out of the fairway. So let's say, you have a 150-yard shot. You normally hit an 8-iron, let's just arbitrarily say an 8-iron. I think that's about what the average person hits an 8-iron, is about 150 yards. Out of the fairway, let's say you would normally hit an 8-iron. So if you were in a fairway bunker from 150 yards, and it was just a normal good lie, it wasn't like sitting down in there or anything. It was just a normal good lie. Then what you do, what I would recommend doing, and what I believe the proper play is, and this is what I've done, and I believe this is what most tour players do as well, is choke up on the club. So I would use a 7-iron and choke up on the club. And what choking up on the club does is it gives you a little bit more control. You have to be pretty precise out of this fairway bunker. If you catch any of the sand before the golf ball, you're going to hit it much shorter than what you intend. You're going to leave it way short. So the choking up on the club, that's intended to give you more control of the club. The next thing I would do is I would just move the ball one ball back in your stance. So if your normal ball position with out of a fairway is straight down from the lead ear, what I talked about earlier, if that's your normal ball position, then I would just put this one ball back of that, which is going to put it somewhere near most likely the middle of your stance. And then you just swing exactly the way that you normally would. Now, keep in mind that it's probably going to come out lower because, one, you're using less loft, and two, you're hitting more down on the golf ball. So it's going to come out lower. So I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't advise trying to hit over trees out of the bunker unless you have a wedge in your hand. But even then, you got to keep in mind that this ball is going to come out lower than my typical pitching wedge. So the only time I would say it would be okay to try to hit up over a excuse me, try to hit up over a tree is if the consequence of hitting the tree is just as bad as punching it out. So if you hit the tree and it just ends up being right there where you can hit the ball again, it's basically the same thing as just punching out. Then give it a try. But there's nothing that you can do differently. The ball is going to come out. It's kind of just a consequence of hitting it into a fairway bunker. So that's what I would recommend doing. And that's how I always hit a fairway bunkers, but I wouldn't advise trying to hit over the trees with it. It's typically going to come out lower. All right. Robert C says, I'm struggling with my driver, hitting the ball too high on the face. I've tried teeing lower, visualizing a flatter swing through the strike zone and squatting slightly, all without improvement. Any drills do you recommend? So usually when people are hitting the ball, consistently hitting the ball too high on the driver, it could be, teeing the ball too high. We've covered, you've mentioned that, and it sounds like that's not the case. Usually when people are hitting too high on the driver and even popping up the driver, it's from an angle of attack with the driver that's too steep. So with the driver, when you're hitting it up on a tee, you want to hit up on the golf ball. So what I would look at is your compression line at impact. So I'd make sure that you're a little bit more angled away as you're coming into impact with your compression line. Compression line is going to be the line that goes from your lead shoulder, lead hip, down to your lead ankle at impact. You'd like that to be slightly angled away from the target. With a driver, it can be a little bit more angled away from the target because we're trying to get more of an upward strike on the hole, or on the ball. A couple things you can do just at address to help you to get a better angle of attack on the golf ball. So number one, be widening your stance. So if you were to, and unfortunately, YouTube has kind of changed the perspective of this camera, so now you can't, no matter how far back I go, you can't see all of me. But basically, if I'm set up like this and I widen my stance, now that's going to help me get behind that golf ball a little bit more. So that's one. You can also move the ball a little bit forward in your stance to help with that. And then getting this compression line to be more angled away is also going to help with that. So try to hit more up on the golf ball, and that's going to help you to get rid of those high strikes on the face. All right. Drew D says, in the straight line release, can the right heel come too far off the ground be an indication that the hips are too open? Is this too open a problem? So here's the thing about the hips. The hips technically cannot be too far open. You can't get them too far open. You honestly can't open them enough. If you look at Dustin Johnson, his hips are probably 70, 60 degrees open at impact. So you can't get the hips too far open. What can happen is you have your hips out of sync with your upper body, or vice versa. So if you're out of sync, meaning that your hips are kind of out ahead of your lower body, so kind of this action is happening, you're getting stuck, like your elbows kind of getting, you're seeing that the elbows kind of getting back behind your body like this. That means that your upper body is not in sync with your lower body, or your lower body is trying to race out in front and your upper body is not able to keep up. So yeah, that can be a problem because that's going to cause typically blocks and hooks, because your club path is going to end up swinging too much from the inside. It can also cause flips because you'll kind of come here. I've seen this. It's fairly rare, but usually kind of people they'll get stuck and then they'll do this to kind of compensate, and they'll end up flipping the club through there. So that can definitely be an issue, but you can't, the way that you kind of worded it, the hips can't get too open, but they can get out of sync with the upper body and the lower body. So typically what you want to have happen is you want to have the hips kind of coming down and getting about to square about when this lead arm is parallel to the ground. So if I angle this down a little bit, as I'm coming down in the downswing here, in the downswing, I like to see my hips when my hands or my arms are about parallel to the ground. I like to see my hips about back to square with my target line. And then from there, my elbow is kind of coming down. My trail elbow is coming in. And I have a mid seam on my shirt here. And I want that elbow to kind of be coming down into that. So if my hips are getting out in front of everything, then my elbow is kind of getting back behind. So as long as the elbow's kind of coming in, and then at impact, I like to see my hips roughly about, the tour average is going to be about 50 degrees. Anywhere from 40 to 50 degrees is what you're going to see the tour average. We talk about on the website about 45 degrees open with the hips. That's a pretty good place. But I tell you what, if you're getting this, if you're flexible enough to get the hips to where they're 70 degrees open and your upper body is in sync with that, then that's completely fine too. So it's just a matter of, how you're built and things like that. But the trail heel coming off the ground, that usually has to happen to allow the hips to open. If you're keeping it on the ground, it can kind of act as an anchor for your hips and not allow you. It can also act as an anchor for your weight shift, not allow you to get to your lead side. So, but look at Justin Thomas, who just won, this past weekend. His heel is coming way off the ground as he's coming into impact. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's opening his hips too much. It just means that, the only thing that matters is impact, right? So if you're able to have a great impact position with your heel coming way off the ground, then I wouldn't worry about the heel coming off the ground. That should be the last of your worries. You should worry about everything that's going on in impact, and then whatever the issues are that are happening at impact, work out to the technique from there. So a lot of people are saying that they're struggling with chunks and tops. So that's most likely a technique, like a weight shift issue. It could be a setup issue. There could be things that are going on there. They're thinking about impact. What you're kind of thinking about is you're worried about maybe your right heel and your hips are opening up, but I don't have any idea what's going on with your impact. And if maybe you are blocking and snap hooking shots, and in that case, it sounds like you're getting stuck. So I'd be working on that elbow kind of coming in ahead of the mid seam of your shirt, but I'm not sure. So if you have a follow up on that, kind of what's going on with your impact, I'll be happy to help and steer you in the right direction. All right. So James S says, I can't hit the ball on the right of the sweet spot. All my shots hit about 1/2 inch left of center. Would like to hit the ball more in the toe side in order to hit center sweet spot. Right. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So if your intention is to strike the ball in the center of the club face, but you're striking it in the heel, then what you need to do is feel like you're striking it in the toe. And I wouldn't just try to go a little bit like that. Like, go to the extreme. You may need to feel like you're hitting a toe shank, essentially, like a ball way off the toe. You may even need to feel like you're missing this golf ball to the inside. You may need to feel like you're coming in and swinging and missing. To whatever feeling that you need to have to move this strike closer to the center, you may need to exaggerate it that much to make that happen. So it sounds like to me you're just kind of trying it a little bit. You need to feel it as much as you possibly can. And because what's the worst thing that can happen? I'm not saying go to the golf course and step on the first tee and do this. I'm saying go to the driving range and try to basically calibrate yourself is what you're trying to do. So I would try to hit balls extreme off the toe as much as you can. You may even need to feel like you're missing them to make it happen. And let's say you hit one and it's still off the heel. Why would I exaggerate it even more? Let's say you hit one and it's a little off the toe. Well, then I would ease off of that feeling a little bit. So it's all about making the adjustments. And then once you are intentionally trying to strike the ball in the center of the face and you're actually hitting the ball in the center of the face, that's when you can feel that strike is happening there. So that's what I'd recommend working on. Now, a couple of things that can help with that, and things that it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing and seeing your setup. It's possible that you could be standing too close to the golf ball. If you're kind of crowding the golf ball, it can be more difficult to get that strike in the toe. Also, it could be possible that as you're coming into impact, maybe you're out on your toes. Like your weight and everything is kind of out toward your toes. So it might help to feel like your weight's more in your heels as you're coming into impact. Another thing that causes heel strikes that makes it a little bit harder to get strikes more out on the toe would be swinging too much from the inside. So if you look at your swing and you are swinging a lot from the inside, meaning I'm coming down and this club's way inside my hands and I'm swinging into out a lot. If you see that, you may want to feel like you're kind of coming over the top a little bit. That's not the reality of what you're going to do. The reality is probably that you're going to swing a lot more down on plane. But right now, you're going to feel like you're doing this so that you do this, if that makes sense. Because right now, you feel like you're doing this, but you might be doing that. So I'm not saying that these things are what's happening in your swing, that you should just go out and do that. You need to look at your swing on video, and before you try that, look at your swing on video and see if you're swinging too much from the inside. And if you see that, then try to feel like you're swinging over the top of the club's coming down outside your hand. So hopefully that helps. But again, it's hard for me to know without checking out your swing, but you should look at your swing on camera for sure. And use some foot powder spray when you are trying to move that around so that you know exactly where it is. Don't go out there and just kind of guess where you're striking on the face. Use something to give you clear and concise feedback. If you just go and get some, Dr. Scholl's foot powder spray, puts like a white coating on the club face. When you strike the ball, it's clear as day where you strike it. So that's what I'd recommend doing so you can really see where it's at. All right, so Jeff G says, part 2 to the ball position question, where should my hands be located? Hands forward, yes or no? That is completely personal preference. They can be forward, they can be back. You're going to look on tour, and you're going to see all kinds of positions. I would do what's most comfortable for you. If whatever's comfortable for you is where your hands should be. Whatever allows you to have the best impact position. You can check it. You can take some swings where the club is straight up and down. So if you're angle that down too much, there we go. So you can take some swings where you've got this shaft straight up and down like this, kind of like maybe like an Adam Scott. Adam Scott's kind of got the club straight up and down, kind of like this. You can take some swings where you're a little bit more forward press. You can take some swings where you're like this at address, really, really forward pressed, and see what works the best for you. Everybody's built differently. Everybody has different comfort levels. Whatever's the most comfortable for you and gives you the best results, that's what you should do. If you think about it this way, let's say you were hitting great shots, and you had the club really, really pressed forward at address, and you were hitting great shots, and you felt comfortable with it. It felt natural for you. It was comfortable, and you were hitting great shots doing that. And then I came along and said, this is where you should have your hands. This is where Adam Scott has his hands. So that's where you need to have them as well. And then you started swinging and you hit it terrible. And it was also very, very uncomfortable for you. Which one, the one that was working for you should be the one that you're doing. When we're thinking about things that, things that you should try to do in your golf swing as far as technique is concerned, you should be looking at what all of the players are doing, not just what a couple players are doing, what every single tour player is doing. And that's what the Top Speed Golf System is. The Top Speed Golf System are universal truths. These are things that every single player is doing. You're going to look at on tour and you're going to see all kinds of hand positions at address. You're going to see higher hands, lower hands, forward press, more vertical. You're going to see all kinds of stuff, but you're going to see all of them have a stable spine. All of them have a big shoulder turn. All of them have a get lag. All of them do the move. All of them do these things. And those are the most important things in the golf swing. If you get those things down, then you're going to be in good shape for sure. All right. So Dave P says, striking the ball low on driver face, how to improve position higher. So kind of like what I was talking about earlier with someone who was asking about hitting the ball more toward the toe. If your intention is to strike it on the center of the face, but the actual thing that's happening is that you're hitting it low on the face, then I would intentionally try to strike it high on the face. So that'd be the first thing that I would do. Try to strike it higher on the face. Like line up to it as you normally would and visualize that shot. Visualize you swinging more under the golf ball to get that strike more higher on the face. Tee the ball up higher. I don't know if maybe you have the ball teed up really low. Typically, I like about half of the club or half of the ball above the crown of the club. So that would look like something like that. This isn't the crown of this club, but I think you understand what I'm saying. About half of basically the equator in line with it. That's usually a pretty good spot. Or if I'm really trying to launch one and hit it high, I might tee it up a little bit higher than that. But in general, that's pretty much where I tee it up, and where you see a lot of people teeing it up. As far as technique wise and what's going on, it's kind of the opposite of what I said earlier with someone who was hitting the ball too high on the face. Most likely they were coming in and either kind of chopping down on it, or maybe they had a very narrow stance and hitting too much down on it. You're probably flipping and swinging too much up on the golf ball. So teeing the ball up a little bit higher, trying to intentionally strike the ball higher on the face instead of just kind of swinging and wishing for the most part. And then maybe you need to get your compression line to where it's a little bit more vertical, not so angled away. Again, these are just things I'm guessing because I don't know what your swing looks like, but I look at your swing on camera and see, are you kind of hanging back and really angled away, and that club's bottoming out too soon, and then it's on its way up into the golf ball and you're getting those low strikes? That's probably what could be going on. So one thing, you may have the ball too far forward in your stance as well. Typically, I like ball position wise with the driver straight down from the lead shoulder. So I see this often where people have very, very wide stances, and then they play the ball off the inside of the lead foot, and then they hit the ball low on the face. So I don't know if that's you, but that's something that I see quite often. So if you can still have that wide stance, that'd be great. But I would play the ball a little bit further back in your stance, and I like straight down from the lead shoulder, because that's gonna work for wide stances, narrow stances, any of those stances. That's gonna be a pretty good ball position, and it can be a ball forward, ball back, whatever works best for you. But that's gonna usually be a good position. So just to recap, one, try to strike that ball higher on the face. Like, visualize it, intentionally try to strike the ball basically off the crown of the club. I know that feels probably awkward, but that's the first thing that I would do. I look at your tee height, make sure you're teeing it high enough. I look at your ball position, make sure that it's not too far forward in your stance. You could try narrowing your stance a little bit. That could help a little bit as well. I check your compression line and make sure that you're not too far angled away at impact and that club isn't bottoming out too soon. And I would make sure that you're getting a good weight shift to your lead side. If you are hanging back and swinging too much up on the ball, that can also cause those low face strikes. So I look at those things. Again, if you want me to pinpoint and look exactly what it is and tell you exactly what you need to do, I would have to be able to see your swing. So I would take, sign up for my Unlimited Swing Review program, and I could pinpoint exactly what's going on and tell you what you need to do. But hopefully I just gave you enough stuff that you were able to pinpoint it for yourself. All right. So Byron K says, having trouble with my irons, for example, say a pitching wedge, usually for me that's 120, 125 yards. The problem comes if I swing easy to hit it, say 100 yards, dead pull almost every time. Friend says he thinks I'm coming over the top. Suggestions. So your friend is pretty smart, because that's probably what's going on. You're probably swinging more arms and not swinging as aggressively. You're trying to swing more arms and trying to guide it. So typically, if you're trying to take a little bit off of a club, I like choking down on a club, because one, it will take a little bit of distance off of it. And two, it gives you a little bit more control, because now you're swinging a shorter club. That's why, a wedge is probably easier to hit on the center of the face than it would be a driver, just because it's not as long, so it's easier to control. So there's that. And then taking basically a 3/4 swing and swinging just as aggressively into the golf ball. So you're shortening your swing and swinging just as aggressively into the golf ball with a shorter club. That should probably knock that down enough to give you that 100-yard shot that you're looking for. But your friend's right. If you're pulling a shot, a pull is a product of a face that is closed and a path that's in the same direction. So if you're right-handed, if you if your face is closed, that ball is starting to the left, and your path is also in that same direction, your club path. So that'd be an out to in path that's in the same direction of your face. So that'd be an over the top motion. So I would just try to take the same kind of swing that you normally would with your pitching wedge that seems to go straight, and choke up on the club and take a 3/4 swing. Take what we call a 9 o'clock swing, which would be bringing your lead arm to about right here, and see if that gives you about 100 yards. I imagine that's going to be probably about right with 100 yards. And don't try to baby it or take anything off of it. The choking up on the club is going to take off of it, and taking a 3/4 swing is going to take some speed off of it. Don't try to take a full long swing and swing easier, because that's going to make your mechanics go a little off, and it sounds like that's what's making you kind of come over the top. So Bill R says, how far do I slide my hips to start the downswing before I rotate my left hip? How far are my hands moved while I slide? Should I have started the move while I'm sliding to the left? So that's all kind of happening as you are starting, as you are basically finishing your backswing. I'm sorry. So as you are finishing your backswing, you're making a little bit of a lateral shift forward. Now, the exact amount of inches is probably in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 inches, but that's not really something you can think about and be like, oh yeah, that's 3 or 4 inches, and then start. What should be happening is that you're getting that push to your lead side, and then as soon as you start feeling pressure in that lead foot, as soon as you start feeling pressure there, you should be pushing and turning into the ground to rotate the lower body. There's going to be some shifting as you are rotating. As you are starting that rotation, you're still going to be shifting some. You're still going to be moving a little bit laterally as you are turning and pushing in there. So it's not like the hips, just to kind of throw. It's not like the hips go like this and then you go like that. The hips, that you get that pressure there, and it's still moving forward. And as you are moving forward, you are starting to turn as you're coming in there. But typically, it's about 3 or 4 inches that the hips are turning. And that's if you are not sliding your hips in the backswing. If you're sliding your hips in the backswing, you're going to have to slide your hips more in the downswing. If you're staying solid right here, it's typically going to be about 3 or 4 inches that you're getting to your lead side right there. So, and that's just a generalization. It could be a little bit less than that, depending on who you are. But that's basically, it's about 3 or 4 inches. And as soon as you feel that pressure into the ground, that's when you should start to feel like you're rotating. You shouldn't be thinking about, oh, that's 3 or 4 inches, now I'm going to start rotating. As soon as you feel that pressure, that's when you should start rotating. And that slide, or that, I don't like to call it a slide, but that lateral shift of momentum to your lead side, that should be happening at the end of the backswing. So as you are look at any tour player, go watch any tour player and put a line on the outside of their hip here. Put a line on the outside of their hip and watch in slow motion as they go to the top of the swing. As they get about right here, you're going to see how they actually start drifting forward a little bit. And then as they start the downswing, that's when they start to push into the ground and get everything moving. You got to get that pressure or that momentum moving to your lead side before that downswing starts to have proper sequencing. And to work on that, a great drill to work on that is one I brought up earlier, is the step drill. How to start the downswing. That video, Clay demonstrates the step drill in there. It's also in many other videos on the website. But if you just search downswing on the website, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a search window there. Just search the word downswing. And the third video down, it's how to start the downswing. It'll have some yellow lettering in the thumbnail. That's the one you want to work on, getting that right sequencing, getting that good lateral shift going so that you can use the lower body properly. So James T says, I seem to hit my drive straighter if I have a slow backswing. Is there an advantage to faster tempo? Actually, yeah, there is. So I actually just recently read something about this, so I'm a little bit of a novice on the information. But basically, the faster your backswing is, the more like kinetic energy that you're bringing to it. So if you think about like if you're a basketball player and you're going up for a rebound. So if you're going up for a rebound, you're waiting underneath the basket. You wouldn't just sit there like this and then jump up and go really, really slow and then jump up. You would kind of try to time it. And then as soon as you feel like you need to jump up, you will go like that, and then you would jump up. Same thing's going on in the golf swing. It's about the kinetic energy that you're bringing to the backswing. So you see a lot of people like Matsuyama. Like you see a lot of Japanese players that are doing that. I'm not a big fan of that. Obviously, it's working for a lot of them, especially Hideki. I mean, he shot couple crazy low rounds this past weekend. He's also kind of an up and down player a little bit, but essentially, he's not bringing. He could probably hit the ball a little bit further if he had a little bit faster tempo to the top of the swing. Now, there are some downsides to that. If you swing with a faster tempo, if you have a quicker backswing, a lot of people have trouble finishing their backswing. So a lot of times they'll swing short in the backswing. So it'll be really fast, but it'll only be right there, and then they're already down. So you got to make sure that you're completing. You take a faster backswing if you want to work on that. But key to remember here is to make sure that you are getting that full shoulder turn there. I tell you what, and it was kind of interesting. I read that article, and I actually thought about some drives that I've had kind of in my life that were the longest drives I've ever had. And they were drives where I was very, very quick to the top of the swing, like very, very quick to the top of the swing. So much so that I thought that it was way too quick of a tempo for the golf swing. But I thought that because I do have a tendency to do that, just as my own kind of swing fault that I have is I tend to get a little bit quick and I don't finish my backswing. That's just something I've always struggled with. And on that particular swing, it's possible that I still may have swung a little bit short, but I was able to have a lot of kinetic energy moving into my backswing to create more energy in the downswing and more club head speed that I connected with that golf ball and it just exploded. I must have had a lot of club head speed on some of those. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I kind of had some flashbacks about some of those drives where I was a little bit confused about why it went so far, because I felt like I had taken a short swing, which I might have taken a short swing, but I had that kinetic energy that allowed me to. So there is, it's kind of interesting your timing of that question, because had you asked me that a couple of weeks ago, I probably would have had a different answer. But after reading that article, and it was, I don't know if you're familiar with who Sasha McKenzie is, but he's like one of the leading biomechanic experts on the golf swing. And it's just, he had basically an article about it that I'd read that was kind of interesting. So he's definitely somebody that I trust in the realm of science in golf for sure. So, but hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I kind of like to think about it in terms of if you are trying to do like something that's athletic and powerful, it's usually not kind of a load up and sit there, a slow load up and sit there and then explode. It's usually, if you're looking at someone who's trying to jump as high as they can, they're not going like this and then jumping up. They're going down and then up as fast as they can. That's kind of basically the same thing in the golf swing. So hopefully that makes sense. Everybody, thanks for joining me today. I'll be back here tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. You can start posting your questions at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Just a reminder, I will be gone Thursday and Friday. Thursday's office hours this week will be at 9 a.m. instead of 3 p.m. Since Robin is doing this week's Thursday and Friday. So both, basically, actually all of the office hours for the rest of the week are going to be at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So I apologize to those who like these afternoon ones. But unfortunately for Robin's schedule, I think he had some lessons in the afternoon. So he wasn't able to take over my afternoon one. So he's going to do it in the morning. So you guys will have a treat for Thursday and Friday. Robin will be on here to answer your questions. So Save some good questions for him. And then Monday, a week from today, next Monday, I'll still be on vacation. Nobody available to do those office hours that day. So I apologize. There won't be office hours on Monday, but on Tuesday, I can't recall, either Clay or Robin will be doing the office hours. I'm not sure, but I think they're going to be sending out some emails saying who's going to be taking over those. And then I will be back Wednesday of next week after this week. So I still got Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, and then I'm off Thursday, Friday, and then Monday and Tuesday of next week. So everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you all in the morning. Thanks, everybody.